Hi, this is Bob Giraldi again, and here we are back at another session of The Future is Short, the life and death and resurrection of the short film. Tonight, we have three amazing ladies who produce, and everybody in the audience knows what a producer is, but nobody knows really what a producer does. They get a lot of credit, they're up on the screen, but nobody knows that they work harder than anyone else. We have with us Sarah Balin, a producer and production coordinator for short films and commercials. She's also a graduate of our program, the live action short film program, the first session we had. Her recent projects include Come As You Are as director-producer, Self-Portrait as the producer, Young at Heart as the producer, and The Artist's Assistant as the producer. We have Bryn McGuire. She's a production supervisor who specializes in commercial production. She's worked on many of my commercials, in fact. She has worked on numerous high-end ad campaigns recently, such as Foot Locker and ESPN. Huriyyah Muhammad is a producer, screenwriter, and the managing partner of Infinite Wings Media, a New York and LA-based production company. As a feature film producer, Huriyyah has led the production of multiple independent feature films from development to market, including Guardian of Eden and My Girlfriend's Back. Welcome, ladies. So let's jump right into, what does a producer actually do?
Depending upon the size and scope of the project and the budget, a producer could be doing everything. And preferably, that's not what you want. You want to have highly skilled people around you who can take some of the burden off. A producer could be hiring a director. A producer could be hiring the cast, hiring the crew, securing locations, securing permits, so doing every single detail. But again, you should be aiming towards working on projects with bigger budgets so you can have really skilled people around you that can take some of that pressure off. But you do everything from the beginning to the end.
I can add to that. The producer also is very in tune with the budget. They are in charge of almost every dollar that is spent on a production. So it's a lot of work to try and make sure that everything you order and every person that you hire fits within your budget. From the commercial standpoint, you also act as a liaison between the advertising agency and your production company. You do a lot of the discussions in the preparation for the commercial. You're talking to the ad agency, you're also talking to the director and making sure everything they want on screen is going to happen.
Sarah?
I agree with these two women. I would just only add on, in short film and from my experience, both as being a liaison like for agencies to production companies. When you're doing independent film, you are that same liaison, but you're more so the communicator between the director and the rest of your production crew through pre-production, through post-production, depending on how involved you are. But I would say number one is your control and your kind of decision-making when it comes to the budget.
All right, let's stay with short film. Is there a different approach to producing a short film from, let's say, a feature film, a long form, or a commercial, which is obviously has its own community?
With a short film, depending upon how short it is, you can get away with things that you may not be able to get away with in a feature. A lot of times with producing, you're kind of managing the attitudes and the emotions on set of everybody that's working there. And also with short films, you may not have the biggest budget, but you still want the most highly skilled people that you can get in each position. So people may be working for a little bit less than their rate, or they may be working in conditions that they wouldn't necessarily work in if they were shooting a feature. So you can maybe skimp in ways like in some of the creature comforts where in a feature film, that would come back to bite you in the butt after 3 or 4 weeks.
But doesn't the union have something to say in all of this? I would imagine that most of you have worked on union projects as well as non-union, and even though short films tend to become non-union, the union still dominates feature films, right? So doesn't that sort of dictate a little bit of your approach?
In a short film, like you said, most of the time that's non-union, so you don't really have to worry about a lot of the things that you have to worry about with a union. For instance, with craft services and where you're going to pick up and drop people off. And so people have a lot more leniency and they're a lot more tolerable of not necessarily having things that they would expect in the future.
Do you find short films any more fun, any more challenging, any more creative?
I think short films give you more of an opportunity to wing it in a way, and that kind of creates a little bit more fun because you're put in a position where you can make decisions, and sometimes they might not be the best decision, but you can try and mold the situation to go the way you want it to be. Whereas in a feature film or maybe a commercial production, someone sees you doing something that isn't by the book and they'll call you out on it. So with short films, there isn't too much of a guideline, so that's kind of fun being able to do that.
So it's safe to say that the short film has the thinnest book.
Yeah. It's a book that hasn't ended yet. It keeps going.
Keeps being invented.
Exactly.
And I think short films are really fun. You have people in film who are some of the most creative people in the world, who love what they're doing, and they're doing it for a passion. And when you're working on a short film, you're able to keep that at the forefront, I think, because it's such a small window of time. And you get in and you get out, and that's the fun part about it.
You know, for me, short film always seems to offer the most, most flexibility for creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that we don't have to do what the rule book says. Feature films are generally done by the rule book. Even independent films, you have to be a certain way. Short films, you kind of invent as you go along.
Mm-hmm.
So that leads me to ask the question. I bet it goes through every director's mind that the producer might be crossing the line creatively. That line that, wait a minute, that's my area. You have any experience in that?
I would say that to prevent that, if it's preventable, is an absolute clear stream of communication between both the producer and director. At the end of the day, the director is the creative one. The producer is there to make their images and their dreams a bit more realistic, because if you let a director go, they can just keep on going. I personally have never kind of overstepped my boundaries, but I will always push back if something isn't working or if it doesn't seem that it'll fit in the budget. That's something that I will kind of stand my ground and be pretty stubborn about, to find a different way to do something, always respecting the creative in the end.
But creatively, you feel that you're well within your rights of giving most of the creative decisions over to the director.
Yes, and if there's ever an opinion, I personally have never felt that I have made the director uncomfortable.
You feel the same way?
I think that the key is trust, which with the open level of communication, there's that trust. And also, I think that it's important that you feel a certain amount of respect and feel lucky to be working with that director, in the same way that that director should feel a certain amount of respect and feel lucky to be working with you. And then it's easy to trust each other's decisions. And for me personally, I don't want to do the creative stuff. I don't want to have those creative decisions on my shoulders, because I have all of the business decisions on my shoulders. So if I take the creative decisions and put them on my shoulders too, it's like, oh my God, that's too much. So I think that trust is key, and respect and communication. And at the end of the day, the director has to realize that you have the best intentions for this project at the same way that they have the best intentions for that project. And when you can kind of remember that and not let egos get in the way, then you have a really cohesive, collaborative, smooth working environment.
You concur?
I do. And going off of what Sarah said, as a producer, you're thinking, oh my gosh, the director just said he wants this crazy light because it's going to make something look better, but it's going to cost us thousands of dollars. And you're thinking, okay, how can I do this in a different way? And to an extent, you can try and give your feedback and some other options as to how you can do it more economically. But in the end, it's the director's decision. If this is going to be what makes their project what it is, you kind of have to take a step back and say, okay, we'll find a way to cut back somewhere else or do something different.
Well, like Sarah also said, if you can't find a way, the extra $5,000 for the 18K is going to bury you. You've got to all feel strong enough to stand there and say, I'm sorry, we just can't let you have that now.
And I will say, because I know Bryn and I work in commercials, what she's saying is true, or you just kind of have to cut back in a different department. And what we were saying before about short film, it's like the book is kind of this continually written book. You can say no in that sense because you're generally working with smaller budgets and you're not working with a larger entity above you. And that's when, again, this creative freedom comes in where you come up with all these different options. But very often you are kind of pigeonholed and you can't say no to the director, so.
Yeah, and there's trade-offs. Listen, if you want this, what you tell me, what do we get rid of? If you can tell me what we can get rid of, then we'll do it. You know, if we decide it makes the best sense, let's do it. But if you can't tell me what we can get rid of, then how can we do it?
Okay, let's say you're producing for me, and I'm directing something right now, and I'm killing myself. I'm burying myself at something that we know is, or you feel is not good. You think it's just not the right creative move or decisions that should be made. Would you approach me and tell me that? Because it's about creativity. It's not about equipment. It's not about time. It's not about anything other than I'm directing, and that's my creative prerogative. But you and I have a wonderful relationship as director-producer. Do you feel free enough to approach me and say, Bob, come here for a second. You should think about this for a second.
I think I would. I don't know what reaction I would get, but I definitely think I would. And there's, something to be said about this trust between a producer and director. And the artist assistant was one of my absolute best friends, wrote it and directed it. And we worked perfectly together. And I had no problem pushing back on him, and nothing had to do with my relationship outside of it and being friendly and worrying about if they were going to be mad at me later. It was very business, and then when the day was over, we were friends. So you have to be strong enough to not worry about your personal relationships or friendships.
Huriyyah, are you going to tell me?
It sounds to me like I just don't understand. I mean, the beautiful thing about filmmaking is that I've never been on set a day where I didn't learn something new. And I'm open to learning. And if you feel like this is what it is and it's not hurting us from a business perspective, my approach would be, why are you so insistent on doing this, or why are you doing this, so that I can understand what it is that you're thinking. And you could totally be making the right call and making the right decision. And now I understand something from a different perspective.
I agree with Huriyyah. I'd say, how come you want to do this so badly? And you explain it, but then that also gives you a chance, now that the lines of communication are open, that you could maybe play a little devil's advocate with them. And sometimes the director needs someone to bounce ideas off of also. And as a producer, you're there to be that other person for them to talk to.
I guess it's really about trust, being able to approach, and where you draw the line.
It's also like how you approach them too. If you come up with a series of ideas instead of saying, that's a bad idea, and instead saying, well, you can possibly do A, B, or C, that would maybe present it better.
Now, speaking personally, I fell in love and married my producer. That's one of the stories of our business. But it leads me to think that, is there an unusual chemistry that has to develop between long-time director-producer teams? I've always felt that the director, while he's the boss in many ways, is really not, and he's really out there alone. There's nobody he really can go to that really gives him the truth, that really can bounce off. The producer has always seemed, for me anyway, to be the one comrade that I've had that has my back all the time. Does that make for an unusual chemistry?
Well, I think it's quite lucky to have a director-producer team that has such a level of trust, because then you don't feel like you can hold back when you need to go over creative obstacles and all that. But it's not necessary, but I think it's definitely a privilege if you do get to that point.
And it is special. You feel
It is special. I do feel it's special. It's really awesome. And some of my best friends are directors that I worked with in the past.
I'm talking specifically about short filmmaking. It's almost as if we don't need the hour and a half or 2 hours or 3 hours as much as we used to.
Yeah, I think that it's like there's room for all of it at the table. Like when I feel like audiences will continue to love feature films, when they have the time, or it's a subject matter that they want to see, but also they love sitting at their desks more and more now. and watching content online. And that lends itself very well to the 15 minutes or to the, 10-minute short. That's really, really powerful. And you can create, an audience. More and more you can create an audience for your work that, oh, I like that one. What's this next one? And what's this one? And what's that one? So, the adage content is king has always been true in short films. Now are more and more audiences are opening themselves up to it just because of their daily behaviors and routines. And the technology, that makes it possible now to make it easier to consume them.
And the community, Bryn, the independent film community is really, I think, the most exciting, creative community in New York. It's just marvelous what comes out of that community.
Yeah, I think that I'm not really sure where that leads me, but what I was going to add on is that I'm sure that you've noticed in film festivals, now they have just short film festivals. They have such a wider variety of short films in festivals. I even noticed in the Hamptons Film Festival brochure this weekend there were so many programs, as opposed to even 5-6 years ago. There weren't as many short film programs as there were this year. And also, people are realizing if you have the skill or ability to take a full idea and put it into such a short time frame, then why not compete with the best of them and put your ideas out there? But I don't think in any way that short films will ever replace feature films. I agree that they can just work side by side and appeal to different audiences.
Thank you very much for an enlightening evening from three very, very busy and vital young producers. This is Bob Giraldi, and the show is The Future is Short, and we'll see you soon.